Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's coaching overview. My name is Talia Hoffman, and I'm here with Christina Dunn-Feingold, who will be leading today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us. We very much appreciate your time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the webinar and actually unmute all of you from our end. So if you could please mute yourself on your phone. We are recording today's webinar, so it's very helpful if you mute yourself. You would be very surprised how much background noise comes through. Go ahead and do that. At any time, feel free to chime in on the phone and ask a question, or you can type questions into the chat box at any time as well. I'm going to unmute you all. Please mute yourself on your phones. I'm going to pass this on to Christina.
Thank you, Talia. Well, everyone, I'm Christina Feingold. I'm the Assistant Director for Program Management here in the Center for Workplace Development. I am a coach, and I'm the program manager for one of the coaching options that we'll discuss today. The purpose of the session is twofold. So first, I want to provide you with a general overview of executive coaching. And second, I want to explain the two ways you can participate in a coaching engagement through the Center for Workplace Development. I'll go to slide deck, and it'll be available to you if you want it afterwards. And I have a few handouts that will help me show all of you as we kind of move through the session. I don't think it's going to take a full hour, so hopefully that'll make you happy that you got some time back. So specifically, I hope to cover through our info session is that, as you know, we have a large staff population at the university, and so I'm going to talk about for whom this experience is designed. Often hear the word. I want to explain what coaching is and is not before you determine if this is the right option for you and the right time for you. And I want to talk a little bit about how it differs from training and other engagements you might have taken place with you before. I'll phases involved in a coaching engagement, and I'll identify two distinct options for coaching at the Center for Workplace Development. And finally, I'll provide next steps with regard to the application process and outline the deadlines for you that are coming up. And then Talia said, feel free to write questions at any point. You don't need to save them for the end. Coachments through Center for Workplace Development are reserved, as you may know, for high performers in grades 60 and above. Those who are seen as effective in their positions, and yes, none of us is perfect. So those who engage with coaching recognize that they have something they want to work on. They have an element where they'd like to improve. Some call this a key leadership challenge. So who seek coaching, they do so for a number of reasons. And you may have peers or a manager who's been coached themselves. You may have some exposure to this already, or you may have had a coach yourself. A couple of reasons that people might think about coaching as an option: developing a specific skill, addressing a business problem in their unit, managing a transition, or navigating the organizational politics. Just a couple of things to think about. And then examples of coaching goals might include managing a key relationship at work that's particularly important, establishing leadership presence on a senior leadership team that you might be new or existing on, or more generally focusing on a strategic endeavor rather than on day-to-day details, or perhaps developing a new or existing team that you lead. The hard work to address any of those examples, and anyone who participates in a coaching engagement really have a genuine desire to engage in the process. So I know you are here today because your manager nominated you for this opportunity, thought it would be beneficial for you. That's often not enough to engage in coaching. You're going to be the one, left with the hard work to do. And so I do like to encourage people to, key into what the time commitment is and what coaching is, and to really determine if it's the right option for you. And if it's not, had people come to the info session before and then say, this isn't the right time or this isn't the right activity for me, and that's completely fine, and you should feel free to choose that option at the end if you decide that's the best one for you. So just to give a definition, nothing to memorize, but just to share, it grounds you in what we think of as coaching here in CWD. So one-on-one conversation with actions to take at the conclusion of the conversation. It's the process of self-discovery. It requires being open to learning how others experience you in your leadership role, being willing to hold the mirror up for some self-review, determining what's important for you and for your organization at this time, and committing to refining behavior. And refining behavior takes deliberate effort, dedicated time, and practice. If you've tried this before, you know it would be easier to keep doing things the way you've always done them. For that reason, coaching is most effective when there's a compelling need to change. So, for example, maybe you've been able to do it all now. You're the manager and you still manage individual contributor responsibilities, lead a lot of projects, and somehow keep it all together. But now your team has grown, and this might be the impetus to say, wow, I really can't do it all anymore. I need to rethink how I'm going to get it all done, and maybe admit that I can't get it all done, and how do I start to get work done through others. To review the coaching process, in any coaching engagement there are 4 distinct phases. And so the first would obviously be startup. So this is where the coach, the client, the coachee, and often the coachee, their manager would be part of the conversation. They'll talk about, this trio would talk about preliminary goals, would discuss the coaching contract, and determine a schedule for meeting ongoing. So everyone's on the same page, the coaching engagement can begin. And at that point, the exploration phase would begin, and the coach and the coachee establish what the current situation looks like. The coach will ask questions about past history, about current issues, and possible outcomes. Exploration may include internal or external politics, talking about those, talking about behavior change or refinement, talking about any skill gap that exists, any other relevant issues. It would include the 360 process, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And you'd move into the actual engagement. So this would consist of planning, practicing, supporting, and feedback. So the coachee chooses a course of action and creates an individual development plan. The coach supports the action by helping the coachee hold him or herself accountable. The coach would provide feedback. They plan, help the coachee plan how to overcome obstacles that may come up. And it's important to point out that in this phase, engagement, the majority of the work is done by the coachee in between the coaching conversations or the coaching session. And finally, completing the engagement. So this is on evaluating the achievement of the goal and completing the coaching process. So in some cases, the work may continue from time to time. You may call your coach back for additional assistance. May eventually, start up again on a new goal. The ultimate goal of coaching, though, is for the coachee, coaching client, to internalize what they need in order to be successful with a coach. So those of coaching. Then I thought it would be helpful to talk about roles and demystify this a little bit more. So the coachee owns the process. So taking into consideration conversations with his or her manager, the data in their 360 report, the coachee sets the goal and creates the development plan for achieving that goal. This is a roadmap for success, as well as an important document in a coaching engagement. Typically, you would bring it and take it out at each of your coaching meetings. In the development plan are typical opportunities to try out the new behavior or to refine the behavior. So for example, maybe you decide that you're going to listen in meetings rather than being the first person to speak. Or maybe you decide you're going to, as part of your plan, ask questions of your staff when they come to you to solve a problem rather than jumping in and immediately solving it. Or maybe you decide you're going to hold time in your calendar for strategizing rather than assuming that you'll just find time each week to do that. You become more mindful about when you're going to do that. So then when you choose behavior over the old one, the more you practice it, the more you're comfortable with it. It requires real discipline, and it starts to become a routine. And you heard in those examples that I gave you, they're very, they sound very simple, they sound quick. You know, with behavior change that it's important to make things manageable, to make them simple enough so that you can focus on one thing and try to choose that behavior over time. So to those experiments, your coach may ask you to journal the results of your experiment, what happened when you tried something that seemed kind of risky, or they might suggest you speak with someone who you know does this really well, or read related articles. Completing a full spectrum of the assignment really makes a difference in long-lasting behavior change. So it's important that you're thinking about time commitment too. The coach owns the meetings, so including setting the meetings up with your coach and then also creating the agenda. It's your time in those meetings, so you create the agenda for however you want to have the conversation during that time. I thought I'd just put up the coaching contract for a minute while talking about roles. This is nothing to memorize, but what I like about this is it does kind of lay out specific what are the responsibilities of the coachee, and then on the back side of the page, what are the responsibilities of the coach. And some of those are specific to focused leadership, which I'll get to in a moment, where I talk about particular dates, but most of them are overarching kind of coaching globally. So about the coach's role, the coach is really focused on the coachee's success. The coach helps focus the coachee on moving forward and achieving the goal. The key tenets of coaching is that the coachee knows him or herself better than anyone and that he or she possesses the answers needed to move forward. So a coach asks reflective questions to bring to bear relevant knowledge and experience to help the coachee move forward. The coach asks incisive questions, they'll listen and they'll reflect back. They'll urge the coachee to test assumptions and to try new options, helping the coachee to leave each session with a clear set of next steps. Experiments that I referenced on the previous slide are often the result of ideas from the coachee and questions from the coach. So the coachee typically comes with ideas in their development plan, and then conversation, the coach may help uncover other opportunities to experiment. The coach certainly support, they'll challenge current assumptions, and push the coachee hopefully beyond his or her comfort level. Coach E obviously knows him or herself better than anyone. They know, you know your work environment better than anyone. You know your functional area better than anyone. That's why you would lead the process. The coach is not the authority, doesn't judge, doesn't choose actions or judge the actions that you've chosen to take. You don't share anything with anyone. Your coach can help you prepare to discuss challenging subjects with others. And I should mention that all the coaches are internal. We all sit in the Center for Workplace Development. And I'm happy to share bios at some point if that's helpful for you before you decide if you want to embark on coaching. As I said at the beginning, I thought I might just quickly touch on what coaching isn't. So it's common to confuse coaching with other things, particularly mentoring or to use the two terms interchangeably. So it's important just to make the distinction about what coaching isn't. So it's not teaching, which tends to be more one way. It's not mentoring, in which one person is going to be more experienced in kind of sharing their experience and imparting it on someone else. Instead, the coaches sit in the organization, so we have a good understanding of what Harvard is and what the environment here is, but we're not really going to know more about your functional area than you do. It's not counseling, although certainly feelings and emotions come up in coaching. That's not the particular goal. It's not advising or consulting either. With a broad overview of coaching, I thought I would now just touch on the two paths for engaging in coaching through the Center for Workplace Development. Individual coaching and the Focused Leadership Program. We also provide onboarding coaching for new leaders. We occasionally coach faculty and senior executives. However, that's not the focus of this webinar, so I'll leave those out for now and just focus on these two options. So I thought just to start, since both of them typically start with a 360 assessment, I thought I would start here. So the 360 assessment provides information, you may know this already, but for those who don't, provides information about how your manager, your peers, and your direct reports do in your leadership role, and it points out strengths and potential areas for development. It's important for you to talk with your manager, talk with your peers, talk with your direct reports in advance and explain the purpose of this 360. Explain that they will be asked to participate. Participation is through an online third-party vendor. Their input really is critically important. And once you decide if either options is right for you, I can say more about at a later point about the 360. But I want to start with that. So highlight the similarities in the two options, focused leadership, individual coaching. So both cost $1,200. In both options, there is important upfront work to be done, gathering information from the 360 assessment. We also use a number of tools, such as the Immunity to Change from Lisa Leahy and Bob Keegan at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. That tool helps us understand behavior change and understand how to create strategies to be successful in refining or changing behaviors. And really setting a goal is another part of the process, and creating that development plan for how to achieve it. And both focused leadership and individual coaching provide that framework for refining behaviors in the form of that written development plan. Involving your manager in the process early on is an important component. That involvement looks different oftentimes depending on the individual, but there is some involvement. And that meant your manager to have a voice in the goal you're working toward. The cornerstone of either option is regular individual meetings with a coach. Both options, the coaches are, as I said, internal and sit in CWD. In both circumstances, you drive the process, experimenting with new behaviors and completing assignments in between meetings. Kind of differences really lie in the structural and support elements that are incorporated into the Focused Leadership Program. But a bit about that. So Focused Leadership is a program. It's an executive coaching program, which is different than if you've done some of our other leadership programs like Foundations of Leadership or Leadership in Action. Those are really based in content and based in frameworks and models, and you sort of have some content experience, and then you go away for a week or a month and you practice using those. Focused leadership, it has some content around it, but it's really all in the spirit of helping you develop your development plan. So it really isn't an executive coaching program. With the leadership, They're a small cohort as well, smaller than if you've done some of the other leadership programs that tend to be, 40 or more people. Leadership is limited to generally 20 people, so you'll have 20 people or less in there, and go through all the elements at cohort. As a result, you have that built-in support. So you will go through, the program features 5 group sessions. You do those together as a cohort. The sessions occur before the coaching begins, 1 during the coaching, and then the final session happens after the coaching has concluded in the form of a program closing. I thought maybe it would be helpful to see the program outline if you haven't already, just so you can see the flow of that. So I'll go through deadlines later and dates, but the 360 process is done in August, and those 3 sessions happen in September and early October. Coaching occurs about every 3 weeks through the fall into early January, and then the program closes at the end of January. So before the program starts, you are paired with a coach, and you're placed in a learning trio. And the learning trio, the purpose of that is to have peers outside of your school, outside of your functional area, to provide support to one another out of the program. These folks can act as, and you can act to your trio as a sounding board, a place to strategize, a place to gain momentum, and a place to practice some of the behaviors you are refining. The cohort presents an opportunity to connect with peers from across the organization, the university. Contrast that just a little bit with individual coaching. With individual coaching, the same 3 components are incorporated into the beginning of the coaching engagement. However, they're individual. So the coach and coachee sit down, they do the immunity to change together, they would develop the plan together, the individual development plan, and would review the 360 data together without the cohort experience. Similar to focused leadership, then there are 5 coaching sessions. We've kind of come to the end. I'm happy to answer any questions. I thought to talk about next steps. So next is to complete application. It's the same application regardless of if you're going to select individual coaching or if you're going to select focused leadership. There's a place to make the selection on that application. In that application, and Tali, if you don't mind showing it for just a minute, the purpose is really for you to articulate your interest in engaging in coaching, to describe your current leadership challenges for which you desire coaching, gather your initial ideas on what you might need to do differently to address those challenges, and begin to consider what support you might need from your manager to address those challenges. It's really helpful if you can provide me as a program manager with as much detail as possible in that application, because in the case of focused leadership, I'm going to use it to match you, to partner you with a coach, and then also to help me make those learning group trios. So the more detailed you can be is helpful for me. And in some schools or units, I know when you come to these info sessions, you've already had the conversation about preference. So you already know if you're thinking about focused leadership or individual coaching. In other cases, you've come to the info session to decide, and that's fine. As long as you know by the time you complete the application, that's helpful. And then just, a reminder before submitting the application, really give consideration to the time commitment and to your interest level in coaching. There are lots of ways to develop as a leader, and so you want to be sure that engaging in a coaching engagement is going to be what's right for you. As I said, if this isn't the right time for you to fully participate, it's okay to go back to whomever nominated you or thought you'd be interested and say, I'd like to hold off. And perfectly fine. So that I had prepared for today. I can wait a minute to see if there are any questions If there aren't questions at this point, you can feel free to get in touch with me another time.
Yes, so please chime in on your phone, unmute yourself on your phone and chime in if you have a question, or you can type it in the chat box, and we can hear it there. So we'll hang out for a few minutes and see if any questions come in. All right, well, thank you, everyone. It doesn't look like we have any questions coming in, but as Christina mentioned, please reach out. If anything comes up, we're more than happy to answer your questions. And also, if you would like the PowerPoint, that will be available to be shared, and we also are recording this as well, so the webinar in its entirety will also be available once we have it converted. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.